What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast. I am, of course, your host who does the most, Ethan Smith. I hope you all are having a phenomenal Monday. It's already the last day of January as we head into the month of February starting tomorrow. So going into the month of February, we're going to definitely be doing a lot more season preview work here at the Locked On Pirates podcast, looking over some things heading into this 2022 season whenever it starts. At this point, that's where we're at. And on today's episode with, of course, Gary Morgan, we are going to be talking about players that are on the proverbial hot seat heading into 2022 and how they can stay on the team. And if they don't perform, they're more than likely out, with a lot of prospects and a lot of other players that were just signed really on their tail. So that's what we're going to be talking about today here on the Locked On Pirates podcast. Thank you for making me your first listen of the day every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. You can follow this podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Odyssey, Stitcher, and Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan and at Locked On Pirates. And with all that said, let's have a fun episode, guys.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And, of course, welcome back, everybody, to the Locked On Pirates podcast. I am, of course, your host, Ethan Smith, and as always on Mondays, now Mondays, because I'm not missing the Mondays anymore, I promise, we have Gary Morgan. Gary, how are you today? It also looks like you added some hats to your background. I don't know if that's new or not.
Yeah, background changes all the time.
Yeah, why not?
I don't know if you should make a promise like that before the Super Bowl, but...
Oh, I don't have any plans on Valentine's Day, so if, everybody knows my status, so I have no plans on Valentine's Day, so don't worry about that. Oh, yeah, but the Super Bowl, of course, that's going to be an interesting one. We'll get to that later when I do one of the ad reads. But as you see, the question for everybody on YouTube, by the way, thank you all for subscribing on YouTube lately. We've went up like 27 subscribers in the last 2 weeks. I don't know what I did, but thank you. I appreciate it. We're at 115. I'd love to get to 150 before the season starts. So you guys might have a lot of time. You might have a month. So depending on how everything goes. But for all my people on YouTube and my people on audio, of course, I always let you know the question before we start. Is 2022 the last shot for Mitch Keller? So again, as I mentioned earlier, this whole podcast is going to be about players that are on the proverbial hot seat. And Mitch Keller, of course, probably, I wouldn't say of the most importance, but he's definitely up there in terms of this pitching staff. A lot of people tend to forget he was a top 100 prospect, even I believe a top 25 prospect at one point, and it hasn't panned out as of yet. But if you also equate the amount of time that he has technically pitched, he's pitched like maybe a year and a quarter's worth of time.
Right.
So how are we feeling about Mitch Keller going into 2022, and is 2022 realistically his last shot here at a chance in Pittsburgh?
Well, pitchers, it's kind of difficult to say that, isn't it? I mean, because last shot would be like, hey, if you can't be a starter, we don't want you on our team at all, and that's just not how it usually works. It's no. Hey, let's see if you can give us an inning every other day,
Mm-hmm.
And they can have a complete second life as a bullpen arm. Mitch Keller, though, he's my pick to click this year. I think he's done a lot of really good work this offseason. I guess you could say I've bought into the scouting reports and the Instagram posts and whatnot. But, hey, to be able to hit triple digits with movement is something that he has not had in the past in his arsenal. So if that's something he can actually bring into game with him, yeah, he's got a real shot to be every bit of the pedigree that he had. So, yeah, is it his last shot? Probably not, because he's a pitcher.
Yeah, again, and as you guys saw, if you were watching on YouTube and paid close attention, I made a little edit there on the bottom, and I said as a starter. Because, I mean, again, as you mentioned, if he doesn't pan out as a starter, there's obviously throw him in the bullpen, especially if he's hitting triple digits with movement and he can find a way to give you one good inning of finding command on his fastball at 100 miles per hour. There's your setup guy, or even a closer or a long reliever if you need it for 2 or 3 innings. He could give you that kind of flexibility in the bullpen. And I also kind of brought this whole podcast up with this whole scenario just because this year is a lot different from last year, where the Pirates aren't just going to be like, okay, we have Mitch Keller, and then who else do we have? And like JT Brubaker and Bryce Wilson. They have a lot of options for pitchers this year. A lot.
Yep.
So if you don't work out at the beginning, I wouldn't be surprised to see, like you said, get shifted to the bullpen and another guy come in there and another guy, like it kind of just be a revolving door of that until they find those 5 or 6 guys in the rotation that they really want to see. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of options, but what are some of your favorite options in terms of those guys that may or may not end up being starters this year with the plethora that they have to choose from?
I'm not sure most of my favorites will end up starting at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
We'll see. I mean, I think Jose Quintana's a lock to get a shot at one of the spots, whether he looks like he's earned it or not. That's why he was brought in here.
Yep.
So I don't necessarily think he even has to have a good spring to have it. Not unlike Jordan Lyles a few years ago. So him, Zach Thompson,
Yep.
seems like a no-brainer, right? You traded your starting catcher for him, so, chances are he's going to get a shot, right?
Yeah, I'm very excited for him, too. I really liked what I saw down there in Miami, so everybody heard about that on Friday.
Yeah. Well, then you go Bryce Wilson, and, okay, there's 3. Mitch Keller, JT Brubaker, and we have, you're cutting out Max Kranik. You're taking all shot of Roansy, making it right out of spring. Will Crow.
Miguel Yajure.
Miguel Yajure. There's a lot of pitchers that I actually want to see. And, how many times has Ben Cherington, I think 3 times on the record, said he wants to bring in another starting option. They have Eichel that'll probably get a shot before Roansy. So I mean, it's pretty it's a different mix than it was last year, and it shouldn't feel as much like a dumpster dive, to be honest. I actually think they could take a little bit of a step forward with the starting rotation this year.
Yeah, and a lot of what you said too drives another point is, again, there's a reason that teams do this. Say Quintana and Wilson go down with injury, then you have all these guys that Gary has said he wants to see readily available. Like, you have them consistently pitching in AAA. Their arms are fresh. You get to see everything they can do. So then, let's say Quintana goes down with an injury, bring up Max Kranik. Bryce Wilson goes down with an injury or he's not pitching well, bring up this guy. So it gives you a lot of different options in terms of you're not just stuck with the same 5 guys all year. And that's what I like about it. Right. And it also says, if you're not pitching well, there's other options here. Like, it's not like, we're just going to start you even though you have a 6.3 ERA. That's not going to happen this year, I don't think.
It's something that you can do when you're building a team the way they're building a team, because you're inherently going to have a decent amount of options, like towards the top of your development system and your major league staff. So it's not bad. We also need to consider that a lot of those pitching options, those starting pitching options, are going to wind up populating the bullpen. So, the bullpen that looks horrific right now,
it does.
Well, maybe it doesn't look so bad when Will Crow is one of the worst pitchers in it. You have to really think about things like that when you're talking about building a team. Max Kranik, another guy that can really, really ramp up the velocity. And if you told him he only had to go 1 or 2 innings, you're talking about a guy that can hit the upper 90s consistently. And, he's got bullpen written all over him if he doesn't pan out as a starter. You have to like that.
Yeah.
It's good stuff to have. And honestly, maybe when Ben talks about this team getting better faster than most people think, maybe he's seeing what he's built at the upper end of the pitching. Because we haven't even gotten to the sweet spot yet.
I was going to say, because you still have all the other guys. That's what you're talking about, right? All
Oh
the
yeah,
other
the Michael
prospects.
Burrows and
Yeah.
Quinn Priesters and Brennan Malones and all of those guys down there that have really just, I think, kind of become the cream of the crop on the
Mm-hmm.
farm. Once they all start coming up, man, my hope is like Quinn Priester comes up here and he's not looked at as the savior. I want him to
Yep.
be looked at as like, let's sneak him into the back end of the rotation and see how it goes. Forget about his pedigree. We're not all looking at him to be the ace.
Mm-hmm.
Just another compliment. Let
Yeah.
him work into being that superstar if that's what's going to happen.
I mean, true. Honestly, also, if Quinn Priester is the fifth best pitcher on our staff, I think Ben Cherington is definitely doing something right at that point as well. But again, pitching wise, as you see, there could be a lot of guys that are on the like proverbial hot seat, but hot seat to start. They could move over to the bullpen, make their stuff work. Now, if they go to the bullpen and then they're garbage there too, then there's a different talk to have. But that's a talk for another day as well. But before we get into the rest of today's episode, I want to let you guys know about the wonderful company known as Built Bar. Built Bar, of course, has the best tasting protein bars on the planet. So many different flavors to choose from raspberry, cookies and cream, salted caramel, German chocolate. The list goes on, and Built Bar is always coming out with new flavors all the time. So make sure you go check them out at built.com. Built Bars have 130 calories, 4 grams of net sugar and net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. You compare that to a candy bar, which usually has about 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. They're phenomenal for you, and even if you're not a huge fan of working out, you can at least eat something that tastes good and is good for you. That way, when you enjoy a delicious Built Bar, you can almost count it as a workout. Go to BuiltBar.com, use the promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off of your order. And again, that is promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off at BuiltBar.com. Because of our other ad that we usually have, I ate a Built Bar before I did it yesterday, but thankfully I finally won a sports bet again.
There you go.
Thankfully. It's kind of sad because it was kind of obvious that it was going to happen, I think. But, I mean, hey, 100 to win 80 is still fine. I don't really care. But I also forgot that that's how that works, so I almost didn't do it. Anyways, Ethan made some money yesterday, so he's kind of energetic on this Monday. He has his cold brew right here, all that good stuff. But some guys that also need to get energetic on this ball club are some of these players that are definitely, I would say, not like the pitching. They are definitely on that, okay, you have to perform this year, you're done.
Yeah.
And I'll let you go first because I feel like you definitely have some people in mind. I feel like you had people in mind last year that you thought were already supposed to be gone that are still here. So I'll let you go ahead and dive into that.
I mean, is there an easier target than Anthony Alford? I mean, he's got to make something of this opportunity this year, or he really should be done. And I mean all done. I mean, like, clear waivers and don't get retained done. It's got to be it. He's already old. Even if he does hit now, it's almost a wasted effort at this point as far as, like, impacting this club. Sure, you'd like to see him catch fire and do something this year, but to me, this is his last opportunity. I'd imagine Allen probably gets a little bit longer of a leash because they just got him.
Yeah, kind of
So
tough.
I would think he'll get a little bit of time. Cole Tucker, man, you got to think he's staring down the barrel at arbitration like next year. You're not going to want to pay that kid anything if he hasn't done anything, and regardless of the pedigree. Kevin Newman's another one. The glove has been spectacular. The bat has not. He's getting pushed from behind. I don't see any way that they're going to feel he's worth going to ARB 2 next year if it's just glove again. Because you're talking about $2.5–3 million for a glove, which could be fine on a winning ball club, but it certainly can't be fine for a bench piece that can't hit. So, yeah, there's some definite candidates there. I'd hate to sit here and say anything about Yoshi because he's a one-year deal anyway.
Who's also going to start at first outside of Yoshi right now?
Chavis, probably.
Michael Chavis, yeah.
Yeah, and I would think I guess I really like the way his numbers stack up. They're all fragmented because he just hasn't gotten consistent shots. But if you really put his stuff together and kind of cram it together, a lot like I like to do with Cabrian Hayes, where I cram that 1 month into what he did last season and call that his rookie year. Do the same kind of thing with Michael Chavis. He's had a pretty impressive go of it. 273, 16 home runs, and he's not that bad. So I think he's somebody that I think might actually wind up impressing us. And the only other one I have is Hoy Park. I think Hoy Park he either shows that his versatility is as crucial as it could possibly be and hits a little, or he gets replaced by somebody like Rodolfo Castro who can also do the same thing.
Yeah, and I love Rodolfo Castro, so I mean,
Same.
I loved what I saw for him last year. Speaking on Chavis as well, I think one thing you mentioned is like he's been fragmented a lot, and I was looking at his stats while you said it, and career-wise, he's a 243 guy, but that's also combining the fact that he hit 190 with Boston in 2021. So that's well, that was 2020, but his career though, I mean, he's a 243 guy. You'll take that for the most part, especially from what we saw last year.
If it comes with 25 homer power, yeah, you'll take that.
Yeah, you take that all day. That's a Josh Bell season again.
Especially on a team that probably needs power a hell of a lot more than it needs OBA from somebody fringe like that. I'm not saying like that you wouldn't prefer he get on base, at a decent clip, but at least if he's going to put the ball over the fence, that's something this team just doesn't have enough of. Nope. So be beautiful to be able to stick that in like the 5 or 6 hole, wouldn't it?
It would. It'd be phenomenal, especially with Brian Reynolds at the 3, Yoshi at the 4, whoever at the 5. Yeah, it'd be great. I'm going to name one name just to joke with you. Michael Perez. Like, he's on his 7th strike, I think. I think he struck out twice now. He's just there just to be there.
Well, I mean, he's not even on the 40-man right now, so that should tell you what they think of him already. They didn't care if he got picked up. I have no indication that anybody is going to really compete with him for backup, though. I don't think there's a better option out there, to be honest with you.
Not at the moment, I wouldn't say. Now, next year, maybe.
Next year, it's got to be over. Yeah.
Next year, I'd say Carter Benz could probably slide in there, maybe. But that's like still a maybe. But on a more serious note, just because you guys know me and Gary hate Michael Perez, like it's like an open thing at this point. Like we just do not like him as a catcher whatsoever. I really think anybody in the middle infield, not named O'Neal Cruz, Rodolfo Castro, or one of those guys that could come up, is definitely like on a leash. Because I mean, again, as we've mentioned on this podcast ad nauseum, when you have 9 middle infielders on your 40-man roster, there's not a lot of room for error for you if you want playing time. There's just not. I mean, because that's a lot of guys that they're going to want to get looks at. They're going to want to get eyes on.
Yep.
Diego Castillo being one of those guys. Tucupita Marcano, who they acquired in a trade last year. One of those guys. Oddly enough, Hoy Park was also acquired in a trade, like you said, but he has to show that he can move around the diamond, like they said. Maybe turn into a 4th outfielder as well if Anthony Alford doesn't pan out. You have to see that kind of thing from him, and I don't know if we will.
I agree.
And Rodolfo Castro looked good for the limited amount of time that he was here, but he still has to prove himself even at a young age. Kevin Newman, I think, personally, and I haven't really talked about this too much, I think he's better. I think the Pirates would have been better off trying to move him before the CBA went, like, berserk. Just because at that point, like, you kind of can guess that Kevin Newman, especially if there's no spring training, or, like, if it's a limited summer training, Kevin Newman's going to start because of his glove. I think that's going to be something that's going to happen regardless. He's probably going to start because of the glove, but at the end of the day, that's not this team's biggest need. Their team, like, as you mentioned already, they need bats in the lineup. If you can hit, like, if any of these guys that me and Gary are mentioning are hitting above 250, I can pretty much guarantee you they're going to be in the lineup because that's what they need right now. They just need hitting.
I think Cole Tucker and Kevin Newman, one of them will wind up getting traded. at some point here. I wouldn't even roll out if it was before spring was over. I think the Pirates actively want to make room for some other guys to come up. Diego Castillo is somebody that I think they're pretty hot on, to be honest, as far as like getting him moved up. And I think they're probably even a little bit more worried about getting him playing time in the field in AAA than they are O'Neal Cruz, because I think they're sold on him. They just want to get him work. So we'll see what happens. Kevin Newman is safe as long as they don't trade him. But I think this is his last year as a Pirate one way or another. Cole Tucker, I guess he could probably wiggle his way into a bench role if he somehow at least had the stick working a little bit.
Yeah.
But,
and I mean, that's the real conclusion to this as well, is if a guy gets beat out for the starting job, but he's still hitting the ball well, think about what that does for the team for a second, though. You have a bat you can bring in that you could probably depend on this guy off the bench to hit 245, 250, something like that, in that range, 230, 240. That's something good to have. A lot of very good teams have that kind of guy on their bench that can come in and bat late in the 8th or the 9th inning after a pitching change, or when you're yanking one of your pitchers
when
out.
the Pirates were really good last, they had a player like that. It was Josh Harrison.
Josh Harrison, baby.
Well, then they made the mistake of believing he was a starter.
There it is right there, baby.
Yeah. Well, they
Still
made the
love
mistake of believing he was a starter. He got overexposed.
Yeah.
And he wasn't as good. That's just all there is to it. Some people are meant to be a bench role. That's all. Wilmer Defoe was a good bench player.
He was.
You know? But the Pirates need to cultivate something like that themselves instead of going to get it. And I think they have enough opportunity here, enough cracks at it, that they'll find one out of this group.
I really hope they do, honestly. I mean, like you said, there's a lot of reason for competition to be it's going to be a competition driven season for this team this year, I think.
Yeah.
There's
and it should be a year all about getting answers.
Yes.
Anything they do should be about getting answers. There should be no more figuring things out a couple years from now. It should be, this year I need to know, is Bryce Wilson real? Is the reason that he struggled in Atlanta because they yo-yoed him, and us giving him consistency is going to let him turn into the beast he was always intended to be? Or are they smarter than we are? That's what you need to find out this year. So put the pedal to the metal and let the kid pitch, and let him pitch a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Zach Thompson, he hasn't really pitched a full season, right? So, he showed some positive signs. He's up there a little bit in age, too. You don't have time to mess with him either. Get him in there, let him pitch like crazy. Don't stop. Brubaker. Goddamn, I mean, they tanked half the season last year knowing he had dead arm to try to stretch his arm out.
Mm-hmm.
Don't have that not matter this year. Make him pitch again. Let him pitch again. He's up there as well, 28 years old. Pitch. And, to me, that's what it's all about. Just answer questions. Don't stop short.
Yeah, and hopefully here at the Locked On Pirates podcast with you every Monday when the season eventually starts, hopefully we have some of those questions to answer. And I think we will, of course, whenever the season does start. But thank you guys, as always, for tuning in on Monday, as you always do with me and Gary. And Gary, what do you got going on this week in terms of content on all of your platforms?
I'm Pirates Fan Forum every Friday at 2. Anywhere you can find this show. And then anything I write is up on InsideTheBucksBasement.com. Every Monday is the 5 Thoughts. Usually gets us started talking about topics for the week.
Of course. And you guys already know, I will be coming at you this week. We may have more than 3 episodes. It depends on how scheduling goes, but I'm going to be starting NL Central previews with all of the hosts of the NL Central shows. So that means you'll get to see good old Lucas Smith of Locked On Cardinals, Jeff Carr of Locked On Reds. Shout out to Jeff, by the way. He about cried in our group chat when Cincinnati got to the Super Bowl yesterday. Of course, we have Vinny from Locked On Brewers. So we have 2 new hosts for Brewers and Cubs that you guys have not formally met yet, but you will here in the coming weeks, depending on scheduling. that's what we got coming in for content for you guys over the next couple of weeks. It is February, so it's going to be a shorter month. I always get confused with February because it's like 4 days shorter than every other month. But at the end of the day, we're still bringing you content in the middle of January, or at the end of January now, middle of February. It's never not Pirate season here at the Locked On Pirates podcast. My name is Ethan Smith. That's Gary Morgan, and I will see you on the flip side.